Hey there, it's Robin, and you're listening to the Healthy Habits for Midlife Mamas. This podcast is all about you, your health, your wellness, and making those 1% shifts that can transform your life one step at a time. Here, we're going to explore simple, holistic strategies to help you thrive and not just survive in this beautiful midlife chapter. From whole foods and movement to mindset shifts and spiritual grounding, I'm going to guide you through all of it so that you can feel your best inside and out. If you are ready to reclaim your energy and make wellness a priority, you're in the right place. And if you're loving what you hear, don't forget to hit subscribe and leave a review. It helps me and you to reach more women just like us. Now, let's dive in and see what we can find. Hey, y'all, welcome back. I'm super excited. Today, we're going to be having a conversation with Susie Boshoff. I met her because it's kind of an interesting situation. The internet can be for good, and it can also be for not so good. But in this case, it was for good. And I ran across her in a group and we really just connected, and we have a lot of the same values. But I really wanted to get to know her and her story and understand like what led her to the business that she's currently in, which is something that's amazing for all of us. So welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me, Robin.
Absolutely. I'm so excited. So, because most people listening have never really heard of you and they haven't maybe heard of your brand yet, but they will after this podcast.
Yeah.
If you could just tell a little bit about your personal journey and what brought you into your current role in what you do.
Yeah, it's a great story. So my husband and I have been in the digital world, marketing, web design, hosting, internet marketing, like long before anybody else was, like since 1999. So we had a company for like 20 years. We sold it and we're semi-retired. And I have had significant health problems for many, many years. I also have 4 children that I raised, and I ended up, I would probably say 2008 was when I first became aware of super sketchy ingredients that could not be good for my kids and not be good for me.
So I want to pause for 1 second because a lot of the listeners are moms with small kids and older kids. And obviously, the more we can learn for ourselves and for our kids at a younger age. But if you have older kids, this is still really good information to be educated on and to be able to pass on because our body is resilient. And as we learn things and we understand the education behind it, we can begin to heal things that maybe we don't even know is actually wrong. So, what was one of the health challenges that kind of opened your eyes to first becoming interested in reading ingredients?
Well, I would say so early on in my adulthood, after each of my pregnancies, I experienced a lot of difficulty with inflammation, significant weight gain, and an inability to get the weight off no matter how what diet I did. All my friends would do the same diet and they would melt away and I would just still be big. And it would be years before I would find out why that was, because I actually have a loose connective tissue disease. It's called lipedema. And I had a kind of catastrophic health experience in 2010, which led me to a clinic where I got diagnosed by a MD slash alternative, but he's an MD. So he put me on the correct path to finding out what was really wrong with me, even though his diagnosis was incomplete. It led me to a proper diagnosis a couple of years later.
Okay.
Then I kind of found out everything that was wrong. So lipedema is what I have, and it is a loose connective tissue disease that impacts actually 1 out of 11 women have it.
Wow.
You can usually tell because we have an unusual body composition, very curvy, and no matter how hard we work, typically the thighs will stay bigger, even in the best laid plans. So I was always 1 size smaller on the top and 1 size or even 2 sizes bigger on the bottom half of me. And
So
that,
is that the only, I'm just curious because I mean, 1 out of 11, that's a lot of people that probably don't know that they have it.
totally.
So the curvy, I get all of that. Were you having any other symptoms that other people could maybe relate to? Um,
Well, in the beginning, it started out where my legs would be sensitive if somebody put pressure on them. They also
mm,
felt heavy,
okay.
meaning I would have a hard time walking. The other
Mm,
thing is my weight was always disproportionately higher than what my body looked like at a glance. So
interesting.
it was very interesting. Like, I could go to carnivals and they would be like, let me guess your weight. And it was like a fun thing for me to do because they could never get it right because I always weighed more than what I look like. Um,
Interesting.
that's still the case because lipedema is it used to be called a fat condition because it would create this unusual accumulation of fat, specifically in the thighs. Sometimes you'll see women, lipedema presents itself in different ways. You'll see a woman who has almost like trunk-like legs, and then they have no defined ankle, and they might even have an ankle cuff.
Mm, interesting.
Sometimes we get diagnosed with lymphedema, which is when the lymphatic system is damaged and then it causes this unusual swelling. I have lipolymphedema, meaning that I was diagnosed officially with lipedema, and the lipedema growth throughout my body actually is what did the damage to the lymphatic system to cause secondary lymphedema. So lymphedema is where you have this edema swelling, and depending on the person and the progress of lipedema, over time it becomes very painful. I would say at my peak, I was probably at a pain level of 7 on any given day.
Mm,
And
interesting.
because of the way that fat accumulates, it actually puts pressure on the nerves. So it
Mm,
causes this pain throughout the entire body.
okay.
Yeah. So
That's very interesting.
when I got diagnosed, many women did not know what lipedema was at the time. And and I'm just going to say this because if you have women out there that have lipedema, this may or may not resonate with them. I'm sure you do. I haven't run into a single industry where I don't run into people that have lymphedema. And as a hardcore advocate of awareness, it's one of those things that does need to be talked about, but we are amazing at hiding our lipedema. We are crafters in how we dress our bodies so that you don't notice it. We hide behind our children in family photos. We wear loose clothes that hide the strangeness. In my case, my lipedema was advanced enough that my legs were distorted and weird looking. So I was always incredibly self-conscious. You would never find me in a pair of shorts, like never. And what was amazing is I got diagnosed and from one of the world's leading authority, and she's an endocrinologist. And she said, you have lipedema, that's what you have. And I was like, I'd never heard of it. This was in 2011. So then I started doing this deep dive and I found a lipedema group. And in
Okay.
women share their journey. And my husband was walking by and he was like, is that a picture of you in your underwear on the internet? And I was like, no, this is what lipedema looks like. Because it's it is kind of distinct and you won't really see it at the beach so much.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So once I'm sure, I mean, for anybody that's listening, for anybody who's struggled and not had answers and gotten we don't know, or it's this and it's that, and it's a misdiagnosis, it's extremely frustrating. It's also disheartening. I mean, there's so much emotional stuff behind it. So once you did get that diagnosis, did you feel that sense of relief, or were you still like, oh my gosh, now I have to do this?
I would say yes and no. So
Okay.
there's two components. So in 2010, 2011, it was still, even the science behind what drives lipedema wasn't known. What we did know was that it's triggered for most women in puberty. Like we hit
Mhm.
puberty and then our bodies just turn into some strange creature that we now live in. That was known.
Mm.
Different levels of pain over time would start to occur depending on the woman, depending on, I don't, probably circumstances in their life. Uh,
Sure.
for me, the pain seemed to get worse and worse after each pregnancy. And because it's hormonally driven, that makes sense to me. And so as time went on, I was in more and more pain and it was getting driven. And I found for myself, one of the drivers seemed to be anything that drives inflammation. So I was really diving deep into what causes my
Inflammation.
body inflamed and how is this progressing, which led me to ingredients, you know?
So, okay, before we dive into that, I do want to just ask, so when you go and you get that diagnosis, how do they determine it? Is there a test? Is there just like a weeding out process? For anybody listening thinking, maybe that is me, what would be a next step for them?
Well, I will say this. One, I think most women have been curious and trying to figure out what's going on because it starts out as like tenderness. We bruise super easily. There's some comorbidities that come with lipedema. It really is a loose connective tissue disease. So you can have, there's a condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome where you're very flexible. So for being as big as many of us are, we are surprisingly flexible, like being able to bend down and touch your toes and almost being a little rubbery. So there's a lot of joint pain and it's that flexibility isn't like yoga muscle flexibility. It's like your joints are actually not holding together properly. So it's not a comfortable sort of flexibility. In 2010, 2011, there was a lot of misinformation on managing lipedema. And so that's been changed over time.
Okay.
And the inflammation theory absolutely holds out. But if somebody has lipedema, there's things like they have to wear compression to help. And I mean, and I'm talking like whole lower body and possibly arm compression, because you want to keep that lymphatic system and those channels as tight as possible because we tend to be hardcore fluid retainers, like hardcore, and that stimulates the lymphedema in a way that's not great. Some women get diagnosed when they have been diagnosed with lymphedema, and some lymphatic specialists are familiar with it. But right now, it's kind of like you look at all the symptoms and then you go, oh my gosh, I think I have lipedema. There's a place called the Lipedema Foundation, which has been amazing in researching, and they have a website. It's lipedemafoundation.org, I believe. And they have a locator list of providers and
Oh, good. Okay, great.
wealth of information. There's so much data coming out about lipedema. It's fantastic.
That's great. And I'll definitely drop that URL in the show notes so that if you are curious, you don't have to be, if you're driving, you don't need to be frantically trying to write this down. I will definitely drop it in there for you guys to be able to click and go and just search around. And I think that's important. If there is I think finding resources for any disease management is really key, and finding group support. I want to chat just for a minute on inflammation, because I want people to understand there's two types of inflammation. There's acute inflammation and then there's chronic inflammation. And we want to have acute inflammation. That's like if you cut your finger, and you want to, your body to respond, or you cut your leg, you need a little bit of inflammation to do some healing. But where we have gone as a society, whether you have lymphedema or not, we are highly inflamed from pesticides, chemicals, herbicides, products, endocrine disruptor. I mean, you name it, we have been just really duped in so many ways. And I'm so excited for what's to come in the next decade, because I just really feel in my heart, I just got the goosebumps, like there's going to be such a shift of real, truthful information coming out so that we as individuals, women, men, kids, of a certain age, can make decisions, like good decisions based on good, valid data. And I don't think we've had a lot of that. I think we've had a lot of just, oh, well, I think this is okay. I mean, why wouldn't it be? It's sold at the grocery store, or why would somebody, okay a product? So I just want to say, the chronic inflammation side is where disease happens. And maybe not just this particular one, but just in general, it's a general rule of thumb. When you have high inflammation markers, it's not a wonder if you have something wrong with you. Like, it makes sense. So again, if you're struggling with something and you are like, I don't know what is going on and I can't get any answers,
ask your provider or find a functional provider that definitely does a test that will show those inflammation markers, because that's valid data for you to then say, okay, what is happening in my body that's causing that in the chronic inflammation part. So I want people to walk away educated and empowered to be able to have conversations with their doctors. And if the conversation doesn't go well or in a direction, to be okay to say, maybe this isn't the right provider for me right now. Because I think, again, we've given our power away so much that we just need to start kind of gaining it back. So that's my little soapbox about inflammation. So now, as you kind of started to figure all this out and you knew that inflammation was a huge driver, ingredients start to, become more interesting to look at, because you're like, what am I eating that's causing, or what could I be eating, or what could I be putting on my body? Since our skin's the largest organ, there's so much. So how did that start rolling out for you? Were you shocked? Were you kind of informed, but just because I
No,
was like, wow, when I first figured it out, I was just like, this is insane.
I mean, it's been a gradual process, right? So I don't even remember. It was probably 2000 when I first learned about the beginnings of GMOs.
Mm-hmm.
And then learning more about glyphosate and the inflammatory impact and the fact that it'll kill your gut biome and like that was amazing to me. So I was already like in my friend group, the crazy mom that was like, no, we're drinking organic milk. They have this RBHT, this because it was still approved back then. It
Yeah.
was safe for you to have that in your milk. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh no, this is shady. We're not doing that. So some of my friends were like, oh my gosh, here goes Susie again. And I was like, whatever. But when I got really sick, I started deep diving into everything in making my life less toxic.
I
And
love that.
I think 2012 was when I approached my whole life very, very differently, I would say. Um, I was already following the Food Babe probably since 2008. I was trying to remember when I first started reading her blog, but she was like this like beacon of light in an area that was really hard to research and get
Yes.
information on.
She definitely has been a pioneer in that sector of things. And I mean, my gratitude for her is immense, because I feel like, is the first to really speak out, the first to really be outspoken, and the first to actually create some change. And I'm not saying other people didn't, but she voiced it. And I really love that about her. And she's still on her mission. So if you're listening and you don't know who the Food Babe is, you should definitely check her out. But I wanted to mention glyphosate just for a second, just because I think it's an important topic. I did an episode a couple of seasons, maybe 2 seasons ago, with Glyphosate Girl. Her name is Kelly Ryerson, and she's really impacting that sector of things. But to have that conversation with her was extremely eye-opening. So if you are not really aware or understand glyphosate a lot, that would be a great episode to listen to, which I'll definitely drop in the show notes. But for a general rule of thumb, it is a pesticide that is sprayed on crops and things to help the deep, I'm probably going to say it wrong, desiccation of the crops to dry out faster. But one of the things that has recently come up between her and Moms Across America, her name is Zen Honeycutt, they tested school lunches. And the percentage of school lunches that have high levels of glyphosate is frightening. And that is not okay. And so again, this mission that like my heart has kind of turned me towards, because of personal reasons, but because I feel so passionately about this, is people need to know, because you don't know what you don't know until you know. And so, when she's talking about looking at her life and looking at the things and the components that drive inflammation, glyphosate is definitely one of those things. So if you're uneducated about it, jump on that other podcast, take a listen, but let's keep moving forward as far as, you're now looking and investigating things. And it's not like it says on the package, this contains glyphosate.
No,
It
but you
does.
have to, but once you understand the crops, like cotton is one of the dirtiest crops.
Yep.
So if you're using uh cotton tampons, I mean, if you're menopausal and postmenopausal, fine. But if you have daughters,
Yes.
I have granddaughters, I have daughters, and I started blogging in 2015 about like non-toxic, sustainable living to save the humans too, because
Yeah.
there's this dirty, shady section of sustainable stuff where they're like, well, you should wear clothes that are recycled plastic bottles. No, you shouldn't.
Right.
I understand that they're trying to solve a problem, but like your body is one of the biggest absorbers of absolutely everything. Your groin area and the bottom of, so the bottom of your feet will actually absorb 86% of whatever chemicals it comes in contact with. 86%.
Which is such a high percentage, and it is a fact that really is not shared very often. But if you think about, you know, walking around barefoot, going outside on your lawn after your guy has sprayed, and I get grounding and I'm all for all of that stuff, but like you just have to be aware enough to know that you need to come in and wash your feet. You know, like there just has to be a certain awareness. You don't have to freak out and like, but you just have to know. And it really depends, I think, for a lot of people where you are on the journey. You know, if you've never heard of all of this, it could feel overwhelming, but just remember, like, the concept that I always bring forward is that 1% shift. Whatever you can take away today that feels not so overwhelming, but a step in the right direction, that's what we want you to get from this. And so, but tampons is a really good conversation because we didn't know I mean, we knew it was made of cotton, but who knew cotton was such a toxic crop, right? And so it's like, but you don't think about that, but you're inserting that and then it's being absorbed. And so, but there are our swaps. That's the good news. And I'll put a couple of those in the show notes.
And they're inexpensive. They're not more expensive than the traditional ones.
Correct.
Yeah. And you can also probably link to my regular blog, which is not related.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, absolutely. I'll put your blog as an additional link. Because it is important. It's important for people to have resources to go and read and figure out. But, you know, tampons, pads, underwear, I mean, like those are things to really think about. And then, you know, that's to do with the groin area. And then the armpits, to me, it's also like a very open space to receive. So you could keep going. We could talk forever.
You're such a kindred spirit in so many ways. I mean, this is why we connected, right? Like,
exactly.
The more we talked, the more we were like, oh, wow.
Wow, we are a lot alike. And I want to tell you guys, well, when we get to the gummy bear part of things, I did question her because that's just my I have to, but we'll talk about the ingredients. And when I say like transparency, you know, this particular brand, because of what she knows and what she believes in and what she's producing, she is the most transparent, aside from, like, I feel like Lovebird cereal is also very transparent. Like, I like transparent companies, and even if it costs $1 more, I would much rather give to a completely transparent where I feel comfortable. Not that it is always more expensive, but you know, you got to give and take where it goes. So as you're learning all of these things and you're investigating ingredients, what kind of starts to unravel for you?
So I was already living that way, obviously, and I was already blogging about it at my other blog, my personal blog, which was just my journey, sharing information with friends. And then I would make myself gummy bears. Like, this is the ridiculous candy journey. And the reason that I started making my own gummy bears is because the ones that were available on the store shelves, they either spiked my blood sugar and made me feel jittery, or they had ingredients that I was already educated about and I felt very skeptical of. So I just started making my own gummy bears in between my travels. And because I have a loose connective tissue disease, I created a gelatin-based gummy bear so that I could get that extra dose of collagen. I don't have a intensely sweet tooth, but it was like my favorite little snacky snack just to have a little bit of. And as you can imagine, during lockdown, I was making a lot of gummy bears. Yeah. And then my husband casually said, you know, these are so good, we should bring them to market. And I was like, I don't even know where to start with that.
And the journey began. And the journey began for you guys, which is awesome. I think when you are looking for not only a low inflammation diet, but when you are somebody who has type 2 diabetes, type 1, if you have, well, even like dementia, you really need to be cognizant of like your spikes in sugar. And so, and a lot of the products that are on the market that are like zero sugar, they're made with chemical based stuff. When I saw gummy bears, I was like, oh, I have to read the ingredients. And when I read your ingredients, you know, I did question a couple things because of my experience, right? But I want to hear now, like, as you dipped into this new adventure, when you started meeting with these manufacturers to figure out how to, what were some of the big, like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. What, you know, like, what
Oh,
people
yeah.
are doing in this industry? Like, help educate us on what you saw, and so we can better understand what happens in the manufacturing process.
I mean, absolutely. I now speak actually at professional conferences talking about ingredients and ingredient manufacturing. Here's the thing. I think that there's a lot of people that are well-intentioned, but
Yes.
the manufacturing process is murky. And if you don't know before you go in the right questions to ask, you will probably have a dirty product most of the time. So here's what happened, right? So gummy making, and this is a fun subject, so I'm just going to lay it.
Yeah, go for it.
So initially we were like, we'll just make our own gummy bears and we'll buy a candy factory. So gummy equipment is really huge and super complex and starts at like 7 million to 14
Whoa.
million just for the equipment.
Wow.
You need a minimum of like 15,000 square feet, and that's like that's not even that's not even a reasonable size so of a factory. And we were like, okay, well, we're not doing that because we're not independently wealthy. So we had to find a gummy manufacturer that would make our product.
Okay.
And this was in 2019, 2020, right? So part of the problem is because of CBD gummies, there is very limited capacity. It's a huge exploding industry itself. And we're not going to talk about that. I wanted to create a candy. So we did find a candy company that was willing to work with our proprietary formulated ingredient because I had done enough of a deep dive to research how to make it. I had selected my ingredients based on my existing ethos. So here,
So I want to pause for 1 second because,
yeah,
you know, you're making this in your kitchen to begin with, which a lot of people, that's kind of how they start. And so just for people who have zero clue, like me and probably everybody listening. So when you go from your kitchen and using just the ingredients on the counter kind of a thing to
yeah.
a manufacturing, why can you not just use those particular ingredients to do the same thing in a larger volume?
So let's say, for instance, you're using a flavored water to make your thing nice and it has stevia liquid in it. Let's just say it's off the
Okay,
shelf.
sure.
It's one
Yeah.
of those like water
Yeah.
additives. You can't go to a manufacturer to make thousands of pounds of material with a whole bunch of these little squirt bottles and go, hi, can we make? And most of those companies are not interested in necessarily in reselling because they're not designed for that. They're buying their ingredients from through their manufacturer at certain levels, and they're actually buying the same ingredients at the end of the day that you can buy direct. So here's what we found out. So when we started, we had our baseline formula, which was very specific. And the way we got to that formula is when you're formulating a product that you want to bring into production, if you have an existing company, 9 out of 10 times, or maybe even 10 out of 10 times, you can contact the manufacturer of that product directly or a distributor and say, look, I'm in R&D on this product. I would like samples because we're interested in considering your ingredient. And they'll just send it
Mm,
to you.
okay.
So, so this was where natural flavors and colors very much unraveled for me. And it was a very interesting thing. So we got all these natural colors that came in. We got all these natural flavors. One thing that happens when they send you the ingredient, you ask for their detailed certificate of analysis, which gives you a lot of details about what's inside them. So as soon as I started reading these, I was like, oh, I don't no, I don't think so. Some of the natural flavors came with warnings. This has been known to cause cancer. And I was like, how are they selling this as a food ingredient? My mind was blown. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to have to approach this a little differently. So what I did find I found that there can be GMOs and natural flavors, GMOs and natural colors for sure. Pesticide residuals in those, especially if they're coming from fruit and vegetables. So for me, this was like, how do I get to the bottom of how this works? I don't want to overwhelm your audience, but I also don't personally consume any industrial seed oils in my body because I found that their manufacturing process is pretty toxic, and the ingredient themselves would drive inflammation for me.
Correct. So, I mean, I think if people have been listening to me long enough, that is one of my non-negotiables of like seed oils are inflammatory and there's no reason to put, there's so many other options. They just use it in a lot of products because it's cheap. But if you do learn exactly how they are made, you will
Yeah.
not want to eat them. But so just avoid seed oils because they're just not good for your health. And inflammation is definitely part of that. But I want to talk a little bit about the natural flavors
Yeah.
because it is, for me, a non-negotiable, like I will say 99.9% of time. Now, having the conversation with you, I'm definitely willing to look, but I would have to meet the person and know exactly what was happening. But because they can, to me, it's a loophole term a lot of times, just like fragrance and products. It's like you can
Oh,
hide stuff in there and you don't know what it is. So for me, when I'm trying to be, super transparent in what I eat for my body, it's usually just, I just don't even look at it. I just put it down because it's like, I don't know. And then, I've had lots of conversations like with the organic natural flavors. So tell me what you know, and then what you kind of learn behind the scenes, and then how you're using it cleanly in your
yeah.
product.
Well, so what I learned is that natural flavors themselves can have really funky ingredients in them that I don't consider natural at all. And because I was already educated on that, that was kind of easy for me. The other thing is because I was creating a product specifically that would serve metabolic health, it's a sugar-free product. There's a lot of sugar-free ingredients that act just like sugar in the body. So why? I mean, you might
Right.
as well just use organic sugar if you're going to have the sugar. But for me, that was a non-negotiable. No sugar,
Okay.
no sugar spike. So one of the most common ingredients that's hidden in natural flavors, natural colors, anything that used to be liquid and is now dry is maltodextrin.
Yes.
Maltodextrin absolutely will raise blood sugar in most people, and it's not a great ingredient. So what I found was we had to compile a no list. So here's the thing about natural flavors. If a custom flavor house makes a flavor, they're never going to give you all the ingredients. They're just not, because it's their proprietary.
It's their secret.
Absolutely. But there's some key ingredients that you want to avoid. And so we had a strict do not include list in it. And then where the seed oils would be. So every natural flavor has to have a carrier. And if it's a powder, it's usually maltodextrin. If it's a liquid, it'll be either a seed oil or it'll be ethanol. And those can both come from GMO sources, never mind the fact that they can be inflammatory. So in our case, we were like, well, we don't eat seed oils, and I do want to eat my own gummy bears. So can you make it with MCT oil? And they were like, oh, of course we can. And I was like, that's awesome. And no maltodextrin, and nothing that's going to spike blood sugar, and no polysorbate 80, and no, we have a list that we give them.
Yeah.
Like,
And I love that. I love that you have the ability to control some of that, right? Like you can go in and you can say, I want to work with you, but these are like my list of absolutes, and there's, it's just a non-negotiable. And I do think for the population you're serving and yourself and other people's health in general, it's a good list to have. And I wish other people creating things might understand that that's an option, and maybe they don't, and maybe they just trust, and they just trust because, so I think you speaking on this and speaking to the people who manufacture, like that's awesome, in a way to educate and spread real information on like what the possibilities are. Because I do believe that some people just go to a manufacturer. There's one in particular product I'm thinking of that just came out that in their natural flavors, they had maltodextrin, and people were using it during a fast and then wondering why they're getting kicked out of, ketosis or kicked out of their fasting. And they're, and they're thinking it's all these other things because they were not aware that natural flavors can have maltodextrin in it. So I think these are the conversations I absolutely like love having because they're so informational and you can tell you're super passionate and your product is made with love and it's made with respect for the group that you're serving. And I think that is just so powerful. So again, good for you I know the journey's probably been a little, ups and downs and all arounds, but the population that gets to consume your gummy bears can rest assured, right, that you're doing, and if something better comes along, just knowing you'll switch it up. It's like I don't feel like you're going to be stagnant. You are always going to be learning and changing. And I think, that community who gets your gummy bears it's not just a gummy bear, right? But again, like you said, let's be honest, gummy bears are candy, so it's the treat. It's not the everyday, let's, eat 12,000 pounds of it. But the fact that there is an option, a healthier version, a healthier option, which I'm all about, so that we're not living a deprived life. I do like gummy bears. That is something, I don't eat them very often, but like you said, and one of the things I wanted to kind of bring up is a pouch of gummies that kids get. We think that they're made of fruit juice, which some of them are, but if you look at the ingredient called sugar, there's usually 9, 10 grams of sugar in the little pouch. And I think people are like, oh, that's not too bad. But if you visually see 9 or 10 grams of sugar, that's 2 teaspoons of sugar. So go in your kitchen one night and do 2 teaspoons of sugar. And this little packet that you think is just, okay fruit stuff has a lot of sugar in it. And, then we're giving these to our 3-year-olds and we're sending them off to school because it's a fun. So I think we just have to sort of like rethink, like where the sugar's coming from, if the sugar, because even like coconut sugar, I know from my dad having type 2 diabetes later in life, he could have a little bit of it and it would not spike his blood sugar. But I just think we only learned that because we educated ourselves. So again, I think there's ways around things, but I just want people to have their eyes open so they know what they're choosing.
Absolutely. And to your point, like, here's the thing. When we created our candy, people were like, you need to make this look more organic or natural. And I was like, no, I want children to be able to put this in their lunchbox or take it to a birthday party and not feel like the weird outlier child that's like,
yes,
coming from the granola place. Like we have products where people describe it as, thank you for putting normalcy back in my life without the guilt. And I'm like, yes, that's what I was trying to do, because that's what it is for me. Yes, it's just candy. But I will tell you that even like, and I'm familiar with the brand of the electrolytes, and I actually just did a whole article called Betrayed by Keto that goes into those details. And it's part of why I decided to do this talk that I do on ingredients, because when a company wants to bring a product to market, they have 2 choices. They can make the product in their kitchen like we did, and then they have to find a manufacturer that can make that product at scale, like big enough to put into retail stores or to make 20,000 at a time or whatever their number is, right? Depending on the brand and the type of product. 99% of the time, when you go to a manufacturer, they usually have their own R&D team. Inside the manufacturer, they have their own food scientists. So then you go to them with your formula and you go, this is what I want to make. And then they make whatever tweaks to your recipe so that it can be done at scale, so that it'll have a shelf life, so that it'll have everything. I want to tell you a story that will blow your mind. And it blew my mind. And this was my first like really horrendous wake-up call on food manufacturing. So we did our trial run of our gummy bears. And this was the first time that we got a chance to see, would our formula actually run with our ingredients that we sourced and we made them buy? All of that was weird. They weren't used to it, but they dealt with it and they were willing to work with us, right? So they have our exact formula and we do this trial run for the first time. And we only did like 5,000 pounds, but that's a lot of gummy bears. So all of our little gummy bears, and I wish I had one to show you, but all of our cute little gummy bears on the back had this little foam, this layer of foam on the back. And I was like, I was sad because they didn't look as clear and bright as my kitchen ones. I was like, well, what about this foam when we do the big run? And they were like, oh, that's not a problem. We have a little anti-foaming agent that we just put in there, just a couple of drops, it'll clear it right up. And I was like, no. And she was like, no, I understand. Don't worry. It doesn't have to go on your ingredient label. And I was like, wait, is that why you think I don't want it there? I eat my own gummy bears. I'm trying to reduce inflammation. We are not putting TBHQ into
Oh
my
my
gummy bear.
gosh. First of all, if you are unfamiliar with TBHQ, please go look it up. But I will never forget my sister and I were at like a soup and salad place and we had gotten the soup. And this is when we were first like, wonder what's in this, that phase of like the journey.
Yeah.
And we looked and we're like, what's TBHQ? And we looked it up and we were like, OMG. Like it is a preservative to what we read. Obviously it's a defoaming, but it can make the shelf life last for I don't even know how long. Like it's so gross that I was just like, I can't believe that. So that's so interesting because, and what I think is interesting about the manufacturing process that I've kind of learned along the way and just kind of hearing you say is like, if you just put a very tiny, tiny amount of something, you don't have to be. So it's like you have to go with brands that you ultimately in your heart trust and feel like are being transparent because if it wasn't for like what you knew, you would have been like, oh, okay, just throw a couple drops in. Like I found, I mean, and it wasn't really about putting it on the label, but it's like if it's going to clear it up, then that will solve everything, right? But it's like to them, that's just okay, and it's okay because there's no policy against it, there's no laws against it. It's been approved by the FDA, it's been approved by whoever that has no idea actually what it is and what it does. So that's the kind of stuff I feel like is starting to like unravel and come out. Like
It's so great. It
it's
makes
like,
me so
do you
happy.
have TBHQ in your, can you go to the store and buy that? I don't think
No,
so. I don't think so.
it's actually a known carcinogen.
Right.
The toxic aspects of it are ginormous. So my husband goes, so I was like, no, you're not putting that in my product under any circumstances. And the plant manager was like, kind of, oh, and my husband, Grant, he was like, I'll come in your kitchen, show me what your process is so that we can figure out how to make it not foamy. So he found out that they were just oversharing the mix when they mixed it because manufacturers want to make everything fast and efficiently, and that's where all these chemicals are helpful, right?
Yep.
This clears it up faster. This is an anti-caking agency. This makes it go smoother. And you're like, stop. Let's not do all of that. Anyway, so he had to show them how to refine their process. And their response was like, this is going to take longer. And I was like, that is not my problem. Like,
Right.
I'm not putting that other ingredient in my product. But if I was just a girl who
Yeah.
loved gummy
Yeah.
bears, didn't know any different, I
Yeah.
wouldn't even necessarily know that ingredient ended up in my product, which it's not. It's 100%
Correct.
not in my product.
Well, I know you guys switched
But
manufacturers.
we had to fight that. But even then, they didn't put it in even our first run. There was no
Yeah.
THQ. I was like, they had to abide by our same regulations, which made the manufacturing process harder for them.
Right.
So now we have a manufacturer I love. It's gluten-free, allergen-free. Like these were all on my wish list to begin with, and they use certified organic manufacturing processes, which
Oh, I love that.
really makes my heart explode with joy. But I want to talk about the natural colors because
Yes, please.
interesting. And since this is like our mutual passion, it's super important. So we decided, okay, we're going to use natural colors. So now I'm deep down that rabbit hole, and there's all these additional ingredients that are super sketchy. And I'm like, okay, how do I get around these weird ingredients? And they were like, well, if you went with organic natural colors, we would be able to eliminate this, and there's certain regulations. I was like, okay, we're going to do organic natural colors. And they were like, no one in the candy world is doing organic natural colors. They're very acid sensitive, heat sensitive. And I was like, well, we're going to do that. And I don't care. They might look beautiful right in the beginning, and over time the colors will fade, and then you end up with more of like, an assortment of redder gummy bears, but I don't really care. Like at the end of the day, they still taste delicious, and it's really just for that visual appeal. And for the most part, they look lovely. Also, natural colors, even when they are from fruit and veg sources, can be extracted with incredibly toxic processes, including like hexane and things like that. Well, that was those were already on my no list. I already knew that. So and it took some digging, but we found a color company that their extraction process is water and pressure only, and it's organic fruit and vegetables.
Which is amazing.
Yeah. And it was challenging, but it was like,
It's possible.
I'm so proud. And so a part of our purpose also, when I speak at some of these professional, industry specific places, it is to help brands like ours navigate that. Because if I hadn't approached it as like this nerdy, already very keto centric for my own health purposes and very metabolically conscientious and ingredient aware, I would never have been able to actually, I don't think I would have formulated such a clean product. But like, I'm passionately winning over all these coaches and doctors, and they walk by our booth at an expo and they're like, another imposter candy company with garbage trying to like,
Right.
get people off the wagon. I'm like, no, 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 no. We're not here to catch you when you fall off the wagon. We're here to keep you on the wagon. That's
Right.
literally my purpose.
Right. And I love that. And when you said keto and ketogenic, I feel like there was the era of, and maybe it's still for some, but like the keto era, just like the non-fat era, just like the gluten-free, like they all have good intended purposes. They all have benefits when used properly. Like ketogenic is not something where you go down an aisle and there's a box of something and it says keto. That is not a ketogenic diet. Like
No,
you would have to know what's in those ingredients. You would have to be able to read it. And again, it's just garbage with good marketing on the front. And I just feel for those people because it's like, especially for people who have like the type 1 and 2 diabetes, who have things where metabolically they have a dysfunction which is most people in the world, the percentage of people that have metabolic dysfunction these days is a high number. And so if you're trying to like help restore your metabolic systems, we've been kind of conditioned that, well, keto will do that, and ketosis is a good thing if you're doing it properly. Ketogenic can be a good, healthy thing for you if you're in a place in your life where it makes sense. It can also have negative effects, so you have to be with a provider that can help you like navigate all of that stuff. But creating a product that all people, not just people that need it, but all people that are just health conscientious and also are trying not to have inflammation go sky high and things like that, but just want a little treat. I think your product hopefully will catch on for other people to start to not replicate gummy bears per se, but just replicate the process of being so conscientious about the ingredients that are going into their things. And there are a few people out there not making candy that I know of, but not to say there's not, but with other products that I feel are super clean because they're super transparent, because it means something to them. And I think that's the difference. You have to have a passion around it to create something that's so clean.
Yeah. I mean, wouldn't it be amazing if you could go to the grocery store and no matter what health journey you're on, that you could find products like mine and like other high integrity brands, but everywhere.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to the movies or Disney or you're gonna,
There was a guy who said, I can't think of his name, but he was at the round table and he said, isn't it interesting when you go in the grocery store, there's a health food section of the grocery store. What does that make the rest of the grocery store? And I was like, wow, that's such a good way to put it. But it's so true. It's like, yes, shop your perimeter, but you got to really be an ingredient detective to buy things out of the middle. Not to say that there's not good things in the middle, but you really have to know what you're looking for and really have an understanding. Otherwise, you're just duped left and right because marketing is, so much. It's like when people are like, oh, is this healthy? I'm like, I'm not really sure, but if you send me the ingredients, I could tell you right off the bat, like why I would stay away from it or why I would think it's, something that would be good for you. So again, this is a journey, right? It's a process. It's, like one step here, one step over here. I learned this, so I'm changing this. And that's, again, what I want people to walk away with. It's not just just do this, and this, and all will be well. It's just not like that. So it's a journey of yourself and what you want for your family and for you personally. But definitely check out her brand. And I know it's going to start showing up places where we can all purchase them. But until then, are you in any particular stores yet, or are you just online?
We're in probably 30 or so natural grocers
Okay.
around the country, but most people buy our products from our website at
Okay.
scrummysweets.com. And then, which is great. And some of our ingredients and our products are on Amazon, and then some of them, our gummy bears will be on Amazon. We're getting ready to do our final big production run. We got our gluten-free certification and
Yay.
that. So it'll have
That's
our,
so exciting.
yeah, and we're going to be at Natural Products Expo West.
No, that's so
That's going to
awesome.
be
That's
exciting.
going to be that's
Yeah.
going to be exciting. So
Yeah.
before we end, just quickly, I like to ask all my guests that come on, because I know when you go through a journey, which is life, we have ups and downs where we just like lose our self-care. And so what are some of your non-negotiables for you that you've created that helps you to show up in your best version every day?
Well, one, I love myself, but two,
I love that.
I practice gratitude. I really do. I take time to look at things that I'm grateful and always try to take the next right step, whatever that is. And then I'm always curious. I want to learn more. I want to understand, why did that thing do that thing? And is there something in there that I can control? And if so, is there something I can do about it? And then obviously sharing that without being too overbearing and not being like that person where they're like, hide our pantry because Susie's in the house, kind of a thing, but more of like a guidance. Because the other last thing that I will say, I love that you say that 1%. Do 1% good, because somebody could walk through my house and go, oh, wow, you're like a zealot. And I'm like, no, dude, it took me 10 years,
Right.
little changes to get to where I am. And I'm still not where I want to be.
Well,
But
that's the thing, is there's
yeah,
always new stuff coming out. There's always new things that as we grow and expand, then we have the capacity to take in a little bit more. And that's what the whole 1% shift method is about. It's like, if you're starting here, just do one thing. And as that one thing becomes more natural, you'll have the expanded ability to take in another thing. And, there are some people's mentality that can just, it's like I got to go all in to get whatever it is done. And then there's some that are like, that is just way too overwhelming. And so it's everybody's individual journey. And like you, I'm just kind of here to guide people to not let the overwhelm stop them from getting curious, investigating, having conversations, and learning as much as they can. Because especially when your children are suffering, whether it is from dyes, whether it is from seed oils, whether it is who knows what, it's like, as moms, we become mama bears, and we really like can't just turn a blind eye. So then we just kind of go down a rabbit hole. And I just think we're being more empowered in these last couple of years. And I think going forward to seek out different alternatives and to seek support. And I think that's my biggest thing, is to create a community where people can come in and don't feel judged, because there's no judgment. I mean, if I go in your house and your pantry's full of whatever, it does not bother me. Like, I'm not here to judge you. But if you ask me my opinion, if you say, is this healthy? I'm just going to point out the obvious, because if I don't point out what I know, first of all, you wouldn't be asking me. Second of all, then I'm doing a disservice to you, because then you're not learning.
that's right.
So I think, it's all in the way you communicate. It's the balance of everything. But I became that mom like you, and I just accepted that title, and now I can go by a Maha mom. So I'm like,
Yeah,
it's all
that's great.
unraveling. But
That's why, and podcasts like yours are so amazing, Robin,
oh,
because you've
thank you.
read that message and then you're giving voices to people who are trying to do something better. And I so appreciate that.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. I'm so excited to support you and the journey and tell everybody. And as you know, I'm doing that live documentary viewing on February 2nd. This will definitely air after it, but everyone's going to go home with a pack, because I think it's that important. And that's how we spread goodness, right?
yeah,
From people being, generous like you, but also getting it in the hands of people that can then taste it and then know and then tell. And I think that's the ripple effect of goodness. So keep doing what you're doing. And I'm like so excited to continue on the journey with you and collaborating with you, because I think, again, we are definitely kindred spirits. So
you know,
thanks so much for coming on. And for everybody listening, make sure you check out the show notes. I'm going to put all the resources that we talked about, her blog, the actual product, the foundation she was talking about, and then where you can find her, because that's, and real quick, where can people find you?
they can find me at scrummysweets.com and also on Instagram at scrummysweetsco. My personal blog is 365 Days of Awesome.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll definitely put that all in the show notes too. Thank you so much. I love your shirt. If you guys are not watching visually, it says just a girl who loves gummy bears and it's super cute. Let me know in the comments below, because now that's a cool thing you can do. I would love to know what you're taking away from this episode, because I think it's important to share what you've learned, because that might inspire somebody else on their journey. So everybody have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.
That episode had so many great takeaways. I hope you feel inspired and more empowered to make small 1% shifts on your wellness journey this week. I'd love to hear what resonated with you. If you want to leave a review, share your thoughts, and let me know how you're going to be implementing these 1% shifts into your life. And don't forget to subscribe and share this episode with another mama who could use a little wellness love. Want to stay connected? Join me on Instagram and Facebook at Live Life Balanced with Robin. Check out my website at livelifebalancedwithrobin.com for more resources, and grab yourself some freebies while you're there. Until next time, I hope you find peace, love, and light by breathing, being present, and allowing for all possibilities to come your way. See y'all next week. Love to y'all.